This week on the UnAmplified podcast.
Hello, Africa. Welcome to another episode of the UnAmplified podcast. My name is Cynthia Mbamalu, your host, and I always come with the energy. And today we have our co-host.
Hi, Cynthia.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I am Chi, and I am the cool one. Welcome to today's
That's
episode.
why you were talking come nice.
Yeah, because I'm the cool one.
Oh gosh.
That's how we roll.
Whatever. But yeah, we have two amazing guests joining us today. We have Cynthia Bichi. Nice to have you on today's episode.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Chi. Hi, Cynthia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I hope you used to watch our podcast.
Of course.
And Shola Oderinde, it's good to have you on the episode today.
Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Chi. And thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you, Sanusi. And it's good to have you, Cynthia. For some reason, this S and this S. But ladies and gentlemen, you're doing
and we are both C.
And we're both C. At this point, the C's and the S. Oh, yeah. And we have some interesting comments in the comment section.
Very interesting. Like, I was going through the comments and I was so inspired because even me, when I did the episode, I was like, wow, I'm so happy that we're able to evoke this kind of feelings in people. So people were saying stuff like they are now even prouder to be Nigerian because not only did we talk about the rights we have as citizens, we're also talking about the duties as citizens and the things that we can do and the things we can't do as citizens. So it made people proud, and people were saying stuff like they are going to pick up their constitutions, and it's very good. So I saw that and I was really inspired because I think that for us at the UnAmplified podcast, we are trying to promote democracy in Africa. And to me, democracy is about a vibrant citizenship.
Yeah.
So for citizens to be proud of their identity as Nigerians or as Africans, then it means we are really ready to kick off democracy.
Yes. No, I totally agree. I was inspired by the comments, and I love the fact people were like, they will get their constitution. Please, as a citizen, whether in Nigeria, in whatever country, or a citizen of whatever country you are from, it's good to have an idea of what your law says, understand your rights, and even understand how best to promote your country. But I love the fact that people were talking about how they are proud to be Nigerian,
associated
and
with
because
the
you know, with everything happening in the country, we need to start identifying those positives and those things that make us happy. But what has been trending so far to our guest, Sanusi?
What has been trending? Football is back.
I just knew.
The EPL is back, and I'm excited about that. I'm a big football fan. I'm a Manchester United fan. United for life.
By their looks, you shall know.
So football is back, and I mean on social media, it's been talk of transfers and which team is going to excel next season and which players are going to what clubs. So it's just all around excitement for me. I can't wait.
Please, what big player did Man U sign this time?
Big player, maybe not big player. Average players who are committed to playing for Man U, and that's more important.
Who is the person?
We signed Mason Mount. We signed Andrea Onana. I think we also signed. There's this young striker from Italy, Rasmus Højlund. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yeah. So we have 3 players in.
I'm looking forward to where Mbappe will go to because.
I'm not looking forward to it. I mean, I feel he's going to stay in PSG for a while, but
okay. I mean, I don't follow football, but I've seen the guy train now. Like,
Real Madrid seems to be really high on his list.
Yeah, but PSG are not budging. I mean, they are not giving Madrid the green light. They want to keep him for one more season. Then at the end of the season, he becomes a free player.
I wish he would come to a European club.
Which
so
club
I can
do
watch
you
him.
Support?
So, but I don't support any club.
Why
I just like a
club. You support any club?
I don't watch football. In fact, on the contrary, I'm not even excited that football.
Oh my God, I'm actually excited.
For me, it's a battle. It's a battle for the remote, and I wonder why people keep watching football. But anyway, for me,
I feel like just a bunch of people running and chasing a football, and then you get the ball and only to kick it again. It's like what's
football
happening
is
here.
fun. I find it fun.
Sometimes I watch it just to watch the good-looking people running in the field. But yeah,
there's that too. There's that too.
For me, is whenever I'm watching, the team I'm supporting always loses. So
wins or loses?
Yeah, lose, not win. So it's like there's a thing with me watching football.
Please make sure you don't support Manchester United this season.
I think I'm gonna do that.
No, don't do that at any point in time, please.
But anyway, Cynthia, what's trending?
Well, some people are jumping up and down for football. Some of us are using Big Brother to lighten up the fuel issue. Yeah, you know, this is All-Star season. I'm very sure that Big Brother will show his face very soon.
Are you serious?
Because of all the things happening, the fights in the house and the different things.
I thought as far as All-Stars, they wouldn't be fighting. Because these are like people who are not popular. They're not like introducing themselves to us anymore.
I think, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? Within the last 48 hours, 3 or 4 different fights at the same time. For people like me, what's my business? They're keeping me entertained. Let them keep fighting. At least it's better than having the military coup in Niger. We don't like that kind of fight. But the Big Brother fight, that's what they're there for. Let them give us the content.
That's what they are definitely giving us the content. Anyways, because when you were talking around the when you hinted the coup, and yes, you're right. That's not the kind of fight we want. But today we'll be having a conversation around the military coup in Niger, and that's because, you know, Niger is just our neighbor here. I mean, for some states in the country in Nigeria, they share borders with Niger. But the coup is something we all are interested in because beyond just being our neighboring country, Niger is one of those countries that has about 25 million population when you think about the population size. But beyond that, Niger still has a major challenge of poverty. If you look at the recent report, the multidimensional poverty index, Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world. Yes, it has a large landmass, but a majority of this landmass is within the Sahara. But the beautiful thing about Niger is just beyond that is a neighboring country. There are several similarities between the states that border Niger, the citizens of Nigerians within those states, and the Nigerians within those border towns within closer to Nigeria. And so the coup that happened has become a major issue for us to discuss. And at this point, we need to have this conversation. So
the conversation is really, really timely, and I think as advocates for democracy in Africa, for this to be happening in a country so close to us as Nigerians, we really should discuss it. So, and Cynthia, I'm wondering if you can just tell us what is going on in Niger Republic.
Wow, this is really a sad one. After the EPL, after Big Brother, and we're having the issue in Niger. You agree with me that this is like the 4th or 5th country after Sudan, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali. This is the 5th country experiencing military coup in the last within the last 3 years. Because the other 3 countries were in 2021 and Burkina Faso just last year. This year now we're having Niger, all in West Africa and all of the Francophone countries. I'm sure you saw the news on July 26th, where the military guard of the presidential guard of the Niger Republic detained President Mohamed Bazoum. I'm not good with names actually. Bazoum, I think so. Mohamed Bazoum, and announced themselves to be the new leaders of the country. Mm-hmm. We saw the condemnation coming from the United States, from ECOWAS, from AU, the aids withdrawn from them by the United States, even Nigeria itself withdrew some of the support or resources we share with them, like water, electricity, water, and we know that over 100 million worth of aid support was withdrawn by the United States to them. And of course, the coup leader, the junta leader, also closed the border to prevent interference by neighboring countries. And we've seen the ECOWAS move and both the critics and different things. But for me, the question is, why is this becoming popular on the sub-Sahara? We've seen what is happening in Burkina, and now we're seeing a form of solidarity coming up. Mm-hmm. Burkina Faso and the likes, Mali, saying that we are in full support of this. And we also saw a lot of, I'm just trying to bring out the different trends and dynamics coming out of this coup. Citizens' action after the coup, citizens' action towards the French embassy or the French embassy and government and other things. Perhaps we need to educate our populace the more, and for countries like Nigeria is a lesson for us to learn. We need to probably restructure our security apparatus, and this is because if you look at across the West African countries between 1960 till now, in fact from 1990s till date, we've had about 27 coups, and 78% are of the francophones.
So I think we just to pause on that, because when you were talking, I just realized that the fact this happened was not something that a lot of us did not anticipate. But it's not cool. Military coups are also not new to the West African sub-region. Yeah. But the question is, why are we seeing a resurgence now? In the Niger Republic, for instance, their democracy is still quite young. 2011 was the last transition to democracy. So you can imagine within 2011, and this is 2023, we're having a successful coup, because there was an attempt of coup some years back, but that wasn't successful. And just Sanusi, just thinking around that, what are we learning from this? Will I call it in quotes the playbook, the military playbook for coup d'etat within West Africa sub-region, and just generally from our history?
I think what we're learning, I think there are a lot of lessons in the playbook that is unfolding before our eyes. But I think majorly, the major lesson is that in those countries where this military coup have happened, democracy is not delivering on its promise. Citizens seem to be discouraged or not contented with with the style of democracy that the country is practicing. If you look at the support citizens from these countries, from Mali, from Guinea, from Burkina Faso, are giving to the military junta, they keep yearning about insecurity. They keep talking about economic disadvantage. They keep talking about poverty. And you look at what democracy is meant to deliver. Security is the primary responsibility of the government. And if government is failing in its primary responsibility, what exactly is that government doing? So a lot of lessons, but primarily to say democracy is not delivering on its promise in those countries, and citizens are tired of practicing that system of government, which has a lot of promises, but without any tangible return or.
Well, in the same vein, it doesn't seem to be the justification for a military takeover.
It's not. But again, how do you explain to citizens who for a long time have been yearning for economic prosperity? You made a promise to them that if we revert to a democratic system of government, then there will be progress, there will be growth, there will be development, poverty will be reduced. But none of that is happening, right? It does not justify the military takeover, but it also puts the leaders in light, as to say, what kind of leadership are they providing? What kind of leadership have they provided in that country to make citizens not want to want them, want to yearn for a democratic government, right?
Yeah, so now is the question about democracy having faults or flaws. There's no perfect system, or rather it's about the quality of leadership and how the leadership has failed, or leadership is constantly failing to communicate to the citizens the value of democracy. And that's the question, because if you read the constitution of Niger, the Niger Republic, it actually talks about, in fact, it upholds the principles of democracy and says that a government should be a government of the people, a government by the people and for the people. That is what is expected, which is why this military coup is also a suspension of constitutional order. Yeah. And I like the fact she asked the question on, is this a justification to for the military to, suspend the constitution, detain the president, and, take over the system? Because what they've basically done is take over, and that will get me to the next question, to the next conversation. I throw it up to every one of us here. Is there any benefit from a military coup or military dictatorship? Because the coup leads to the installation of a military dictatorship.
Yes.
Is there any benefits?
Benefits, no. Of course not.
When you said yes, at first I was like,
I was shocked.
I think it was saying yes to my question.
Yeah, I was affirming your last sentence. There are no benefits in a military dictatorship. It's simply a backslide into an authoritarian system of government. And we all know that in an authoritarian system of government, there's no freedom of expression. You can't say anything you want to say. You can't there are repercussions for every statement you make against the government. You can't hold the government accountable. So your human rights are suspended, right? Your freedom is based on the whims and caprices of the military dictatorship in power, right? So there are no benefits. But one thing that military overthrow of democratic government has shown in history or in the past is that in the first stage, citizens are happy. Right, the euphoria of having a new government, kicking out one that seems to be obsolete or not performing its duty, makes them really happy. And then the military kind of gets the support of the citizens to perpetuate themselves in power. But as time goes on, right, the military starts to show its true color. And a perfect example is Burkina Faso. The Burkina Faso dictatorship withdrew the license of a private radio station simply because they granted audience to an opposition of the military coup in Niger. And you wonder, that is just an interview. It's harmless. But if a dictatorship can do that, then you wonder what's to come in the next month.
Cynthia, what's your thoughts around this?
This wouldn't have happened if it was a democratic system of government.
No, of course not.
Sanusi said that there's no benefit. I think there's benefit, but not to everyone. To a few. The military dictator benefits economically true. Most of the loot we have, even though there are issues of corruption even in democratic system of governments, but it happens with impunity in a military system of government. So there are individual benefits, but the question is, like you mentioned, it's not beneficial to others. And there's something about this excitement. I'm of the view that is because of the change of government. Whenever there's a change in government, even through a democratic system, there's always an excitement. In Nigeria, for instance,
we didn't get that after February 2015.
We saw happen in 2015. Even in 2023, there's a mix. There's a kind of a mix in Nigeria. If you go to some part of the country, some people were excited. There's always this ease, not just in government, even in public institutions. I remember while I was working in one of these public institutions, I will not mention, immediately they changed the CEO. People were excited, and sometimes you ask yourself, why are these people excited? What's the benefit? What do they stand to gain? So it's just a human way of, there's a new change.
Yeah.
And if you notice, most of the speech given by this military juntas are always rationalized on some of the issues or the challenges or yearning of the public. For instance, in Niger, they said based on security issues and economic issues, which for an ordinary citizen, it's a yes. But the question is, and this is same with what happened in Burkina Faso, what happens afterwards? Do they deliver? And I know that in the past 3 or 4 years, there's a discussion on democracy, like you mentioned, is not delivering. And I think we need to go beyond development. Democracy and development are two different things. There can be development in a police state, and citizens' rights will still not be guaranteed. We understand that there's a need for development, but beyond development, what do we need? And democracy can lead to development. It's the fact that citizens don't even understand their right to demand for accountability. When you demand for accountability, it brings about good governance, it brings about development, and you get those things that you think you can get through a military dictatorship. So for me, it's about educating the citizens, it's about citizens understanding. And you know that poverty, in an environment where poverty is rooted, the thinking of the population varies. I'm very sure if you go back to Niger and you meet the educated elite, their opinion might differ from the one you see on the street of Niamey and other states.
Yeah, no, definitely, because when you were talking, I just remember when you said your thoughts around democracy, when you said that's what we want is democracy, because democracy is a better option than the military. And I was just wondering, what do you think for the young person in Niger? What do you think they should care about with this military coup?
I think I saw the opinion of some young people on social media, and even when we read the news, it seems like a certain percentage of young people are happy with the coup. But I agree with Cynthia that it's all about the human nature to celebrate change. I think it's all about excitement, hoping that this new thing will at least be better than what was there previously. But I also think that there's no benefit to dictatorship, because and at least in our last episode we talked about the constitution, our rights. In a dictatorship there is no guarantee for your human rights.
True.
The regime just makes a decree and that's law. So whatever you think the government owes you is trashed. So I think that as young people, we are trying to, and Niger, just like every other African country, has a high percentage of young people.
Yes.
So for a country like that, where the young people are not even guaranteed of their freedom of expression or freedom of access to their human rights, I think it's contradictory to the development that we are seeking as Africans.
Yes,
and
yes.
Cynthia, if I might mention, I think there are also 2 or 3 dimensions to this for the young people. First of all, these young people, in one breath, for instance, in countries like Nigeria, did not experience the military regime. They don't understand the difference. They don't understand the benefits. For instance, in Nigeria, you see people going on social media calling out the president, saying this. They don't understand that, because I've heard people in Nigeria calling for such military actions. They don't understand that this freedom they have to even go and slander people unnecessarily online will not be guaranteed. You can do it and go scot-free.
No.
But going back to countries like Niger, I think on the contrary, or on the other side, these young people have not also seen an alternative option. Why am I saying this?
Yeah.
It's just about 10 years. This is the first government, that's the government of Mohammed Bazoum, is the first government that is taking over from a democratically elected government. And you remember that 2 days to his inauguration, a coup almost emerged.
Yeah.
So these people have not also seen. It's just like if you've not tasted a good wine, you don't know whether the wine you're taking is not good or not.
Yeah.
So they also do not understand the benefits of living in a democratic society.
True.
So those people might say, oh, perhaps when we had the former military junta was performing much better than that. But the question I kept wondering is 10 years, because from 2011 till date, is 10 years enough for them to reap or to see the dividend of democracy? That's the question I kept asking. And are citizens patient enough? Are they impatient? And looking at what has happened, is 10 years enough to upturn what has happened? Niger has about 5 successful coups at the moment since 1960.
Yeah, the other question, and I'll be coming into, because if you follow the conversations, there seem to be this rebellion on the part of the citizen against French influence, or rather the French-Niger or the France-Niger relationship. And I was just wondering, are there reasons for those agitation and those rebellion against the idea of France-Niger relationship?
Yes, and legitimate reasons too. So you look at the French and Francophone countries' relationship, right? And you just see a lot of neocolonialism going on. I mean, yes, these countries gain independence and they're independent, they run their affairs, but that's just on paper, right? Behind the scenes, France has been controlling the resources of major governments, if not all, of all West African Francophone countries. And for example, as recent as 2019, up until 2019, 50% of the foreign reserves of West African Francophone countries are deposited in a French bank, in France central bank. And you wonder why that's happening, 50%. So what's left? But also away from that is how France leans on the natural resources of these governments. Niger, let's take Niger for example too. Niger is the 2nd or 3rd largest exporter of uranium in the world. Seventh. Oh, thank you. I mean, Nigeria gives Niger electricity. They depend on Nigeria for electricity. And you wonder, a country with such large reserves of uranium, how come you're not able to get your electricity sector sorted? What's happening? And so that relationship has to change. it has to be equal. France can no longer continue to play the big brother, quote and unquote, to francophone countries. And most of these agitations are against the role that France play in the affairs of these countries. And now, as young people, I mean, you were born into a country that has a solid relationship with France. You go to school, you become educated, and you see how France still controls some of your resources. It makes you angry. Right, and you wonder why that is happening in this age and time. I mean, colonialism was banished a long time ago, so you wonder why France still has so much influence over your nation's resources. And then so you have this, not hatred, but you have this concern for that.
I think, yeah.
And then the military comes in overnight and say, you know what, we're breaking off this relationship with France. Yeah. As a young person, you're gingered. I mean, the Nigerian policy are gingered to support the military because they'd be like, oh yes, we should do this. France shouldn't be controlling our resources or whatnot. But beneath that, what's the intention of the military itself?
Yeah, I like the point you said about the intention of the military, because you know, when we talk about the playbook, the military always comes with this excuse. You know, it's like a camouflage.
Yeah.
Yes, there's insecurity, there is economic challenges, and the government has failed or they are corrupt, and we're also coming here because we are trying to enforce our sovereignty and our independence. So they ride on this popular sentiment, and with the wave of populism, there's that likelihood that the majority of the population, which in this case are young people, would see value in those conversations. But I think where the problem is where we end the conversation. Like, okay, you want to do this, what is your intention? Because we know that we talked about Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea. The whole conversation that would ensure transition to government. They've been there now. Yeah. 1 year don't pass, 2 years don't pass. Yeah, exactly. There is no guarantee. I know with the military, you can't question them.
Exactly what I was going to say. If it's in a democracy, at least we had this meter that was calculating the promises during the elections and how the government is carrying those things out. For the military, no matter what they tell you they want to do when they get into power, can you question them?
And they don't even give timeline.
And they don't give timeline.
So you don't question.
Assuming we have this option, assuming Africans or the African countries that are experiencing this crisis have the option of saying, okay, you want to take over power. So after 1 year, if you don't deliver on what our democratic government couldn't give us, should we now oust you? Like, there has to be a conversation.
Why do they always think they are the solution to? Because the savior mentality and entitlement is what bothers me. And I think the issue around the colonial interference is a two-way thing. For ordinary citizens, they are worried about, we don't have this. But the military junta, one of the reasons why they're also banning the foreign interference is not because it's because they want to be left alone to do things the way they want to do. They do it. They don't want forces, external forces, to ensure they transit power to. This is one of the reasons, I think, while they also look at the foreign interference. But I know that critics and analysts have also asked themselves, why are we having more of this in francophone countries? Because if you look at 7 out of the 9 francophone countries use CFA, and we know that CFA is pegged against the euro, and it is guaranteed by France. So these are some of the economic issues. But we also know that being a British colony, we know that the British also have some of their interests when it comes to setting up institutions that will serve political interests, but not economic interests as much as France. So these are some of the things that the military junta are taking advantage of.
I totally agree with you, and I love the point to make, because beyond just Francophone West Africa is the fact that this is the question we need to start asking ourselves as Africans. What is the interest of the former colonial leadership with our respective countries? Because, post-independence, we still see the influence of these respective countries in our respective countries in Africa, but also our relationship with the West. And for me, I would always call our leaders, because a lot of the times when we talk about we've gotten independence, we're a sovereign nation, I also think the idea of sovereignty and independence is also a mindset thing. Because when our leaders have conversations and negotiate with the leaders from the West, for instance. We also see Russia making its inroad. We see China making a lot of inroad within different parts of the continent. But I always wonder, do our leaders have important conversation that puts the interest of its people first? Or do we go to the table from a beggarly position? Or do we engage from a point of where equal partners, we have resources, you care about our resources, how does your interest or how does our relationship benefit our people? Because that's also the conversation we need to start having. And you're right, the average young person, when you read the social media conversation, see some people burning flags with French flags, and you can see that there's also that question around, we're supposed to be independent, why do we feel your influence so much? You talked about the country, one of the 10 countries that produces or that has uranium. France mines this uranium. How does that benefit the people of Niger? How do the average Nigerian say, yes, we have these resources and this is the impact? Because interestingly, if you think about the resources in Niger, they talk about subsistence farming as the economy that seems to be sustaining the people. And it's not even working because that is a country that has larger percentage of its land on the Sahara. So, this is a country that ought to be rich, beautiful country, has beautiful people, beautiful culture, but the leadership has not delivered its promises. So I understand the agitation by the people, but in this conversation, as we're talking, I was thinking around beyond Niger, within the continent. Okay, let's focus on West Africa because we've had more of this coup
in West Africa.
And we've seen ECOWAS has the response from ECOWAS, conversations around the need to still dialogue, because I don't think ECOWAS is ready. I don't think ECOWAS can take any war at this point in time. ECOWAS has about 400 million plus people, and the other parts of the continent cannot take our number if we go into war. Niger, we need stability in Niger because we also can't afford to have we can't bear the number as Nigeria. So I talk about before the ECOWAS part, maybe look at Nigeria. Why should Nigerians care about the coup, for instance?
I feel like we've mentioned it. I mean, first is to prevent instability. First between Nigeria and Niger, but also in the West African sub-region. I mean, looking at the full picture. Nigerians should care what happens in Niger. Also because Niger serves as one of the countries that is fighting jihadists in the Sahel, right? So it's more like a buffer zone for Nigeria. Mm-hmm. If Niger and Chad are not up to that fight, then a lot of it falls on Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And we already know we're dealing with a lot of insurgency in the country itself, and we can't afford to take any more. So Nigerians should be very concerned about what is happening. I like that ECOWAS is insisting on dialogue and I mean, resolving the situation through negotiations. But also, I think it's important for ECOWAS to also show some level of force, so the junta can be aware that while we are prioritizing dialogue, we also have this other option on the table. And I think that's what ECOWAS is trying to do. Diplomacy is a better tool to use than military intervention to resolve the crisis.
You talked about being a buffer to the fight against the insurgent.
The
jihadists. You've even forgotten Libya.
So jihadists from Libya.
Yeah, you're looking at jihadists from there's Libya and other countries around the Lake Chad and how they've contributed. Even with the insurgents we're fighting within the country. So for me, it's also the economic issues. If 10%, for instance, of the 25 million you mentioned happen to find themselves in Nigeria, if there's instability in Niger, and I assure you it will be more than 10% that will flow into Nigeria. We bother with Niger with about between seven states, both northeast to northwest, the whole of Lake Chad. You can imagine what will happen on a fragile economy. You know that aside Nigeria, the economy internationally is also not stable. So who is going to help who? Most countries are withdrawing their aid, and Nigeria is struggling with its own economy. How do we support this inflow? Because whether I like it or not, Nigeria will be the most affected at the end of the day, because we share 3 major languages with them. Nigeria will not run into. Interestingly, Nigeria is supposed to go to Benin Republic or other countries, but you find majority of them move into Nigeria because they're more comfortable with trading and doing some things in Nigeria. And that's why probably the last government had its own justification to why there are train stations. And they're saying that it's to boost economic activity so that it will not be affected. In this Abuja, most people that push trucks and sell water, cobblers, they are from Niger. They know, people from the northwest, northwest, knows the difference. Sometimes they'll tell, this guy is from Niger. You'll be shocked. They tell that this guy is from Katsina. People that sell in these small kiosks that you see in Gwarimpa, wherever, they're from there. So what do you can imagine most of them would just find their way here. But talking about ECOWAS, I think ECOWAS is trying to show leadership. They want to be seen at the forefront. They don't want that is after an action or decision taken by the US government, by AU. They let it not be an afterward or a second option. Let them be seen. And that's why while they're making pronouncement, they're calling up on AU, calling on US to support them. Then when you talk about the ECOWAS, I think ECOWAS is also looking at itself as maybe, and people are saying that ECOWAS, what happened? What happened to Burkina Faso? They couldn't do anything. Mali, they couldn't do anything. So ECOWAS is trying to put that front to show that we can put a stop on this, because it's beginning to look like ECOWAS is a dog that bites and cannot.
That backs and does not bite. Definitely. Yes, definitely. Because we have the protocol, the ECOWAS protocol on democracy and elections. But when we're talking about ECOWAS and the fact that a lot of the chair of ECOWAS happens to be the Nigerian president, because they've been conversation, people saying, President Tinubu is taking action. They don't understand that the decisions he's making is not as a Nigerian president, is as ECOWAS, and that's
the one taking the decision.
So it's a conversation. They have the heads of states or the presidents from the respective they have a summit, they have a decision, just that he may be the face reading the decision. But so I think Nigerians need to also understand that he's not speaking as a Nigerian president. He's speaking as the chair of ECOWAS. But beyond that, Nigerians also needs to also care about, because we talked about the similarities. When we said 7 states, if you look at the map,
3 languages.
I was having a question with Chinemerem, let's even look at the map. If you look at the map, you will see how we are. So if you think of the 7 states that borders with Niger, they've been intermarriages too. Because most time we don't even talk about this.
Yes.
People have married. People, in fact, I read one report and said in the 19th century, before it was the colonial people, the French and the British, that did this border. Some of these communities were one people before the borders were drawn. So sometimes this is also when we question the colonialism, because colonialism did divide a people that ordinarily ought to be one, and then made some marriages that I'm not sure if they were good decisions. However, we've had a lot of intermarriage happening within these states. We have businesses there are some businesses in these states in the north that either they farm in Nigeria and sell in Niger, or they move from Niger. So there are also questions about people who had their products like onions, tomatoes, that they normally sell on a daily basis. But with the closure of the borders, all of these things is suspended. So it also affects poverty and affects businesses.
But Cynthia, are these borders really close? Because in practical terms, because these borders, there's no clear borders. And I don't know, you've been to Kebbi. There are times that you're in one local government, your network changes in Kebbi.
See, if I get your point, I mean, our borders are porous, especially in that part of the country.
There's no clear borders.
But officially, there's no diplomatic relationship between Nigeria and Niger as it stands. And what that does is, for example, the sanctions that have been placed on Niger. Also, I was reading a news report, and it says there's a Kajanji Dam that is being constructed by the government of Bazoum, but because of the sanctions from Nigeria and the EU, that the lead construction company who is in charge of that project cannot settle its accounts. And because it cannot settle its accounts, cannot continue to pay its local workforce. And that means they have to release those people, Nigerians, who are part of that workforce. And that just contributes to poverty in the land, right? That sanction, however ineffective you might think it is, contributes to increasing poverty.
No, the sanction is effective, of course.
So you're going to release that huge number of citizens into the polity, and then there's no job, and they just wake up one morning because of force majeure, they don't have a job anymore. Yeah, they cannot earn a living.
Definitely. So like these are very important. And I think this is why, because a lot of Nigerians like, why should we care about it? We should care about it. And it's not a northern problem, because most times people say, oh, it's a problem of the north. It's not a northern problem, because a lot of, we're so interconnected that we don't even understand that most of our ability to eat in one part of the country is depending on the ability of some other people to farm, to have their businesses running, so that you can sustain. And so at the end, we all suffer from it, which is why there's a call to the military who took over the country to at least start having that dialogue, and for ECOWAS to provide the leadership. But it made me start thinking around the question on democracy generally. One, we've talked about ECOWAS trying to provide leadership and the AU trying to provide leadership. And in my mind, I'm thinking, is it also too late? Are they coming in too late to the conversation? And this is why I asked this question. And I'll start from Chi. Democracy in itself, a lot of young Africans are asking themselves questions about, is democracy working? Elections are held and people the process in itself doesn't seem credible, or people do not think their votes are actually counting. Not just in Nigeria, I'm talking about countries, because I'm thinking Togo, because there are some countries I'm wondering, like, people have been in government for so long. Yeah. What are the citizens? What are the young people in those countries? How do they view democracy? So at this point, yes, say no to the military coup, but is ECOWAS coming late to the conversation around upholding the tenets of democracy, upholding the principles around electoral integrity in respective countries? Are there things that can be done better to prevent these coups?
Yes, of course, there has to be a lot has to be done. I think that ECOWAS in itself needs to hold the governments, that's the people who make up their union, yes, right? Yeah. He'll need to hold them accountable. Like any president that comes into power, I think ECOWAS should be able to ensure that the election that brought the person into power, if we are really talking about democracy, that the election is legitimate. You can't, for you to accept the person into your union as ECOWAS, it means you're legitimizing the person's presidency.
ECOWAS coming in too late. It depends on where you're coming from. We know that based on people elongating their tenure, we can say that ECOWAS is not too early, it's not too late. But I know that in the last 10 years, some West African countries like Benin Republic wanted to elongate its tenure, and it wasn't successful. And some other countries, we know that within between 2000 to 2010, it was like a movement of people extending tenures. We remember Nigeria too wanted to extend during President Obasanjo. Obasanjo wanted to extend the tenure. If the laws of those countries guarantee that you can stay at infinity, ECOWAS cannot do anything. Perhaps it's time. It is the citizens of that country that might move for a change in the laws of that country.
I don't totally agree. ECOWAS cannot do anything. But conclude your point.
Yeah, because you remember that the sovereignty of the state. Yes, and you've also forgot. Yes, you've also, because ECOWAS will not be the one to come and tell you that if it is in your laws, they cannot come and tell you that you need to change your laws. But like she said, the elections that elect you into, you're seeing Sierra Leone, the president of Sierra Leone, what is happening in Sierra Leone. But we remember the election that brought him to power. But after being there, what happened? What is he doing now? What happened to the last election? The election that was just concluded about 3 or 4 months ago. What happened to the election? So in my own view, ECOWAS needs to step up in terms of taking action for countries that move for
extended tenure,
unconstitutional change.
Yes, and unconstitutional change. Both extended tenure and unconstitutional change. These are the two areas where ECOWAS needs to stamp their feet and take action.
I think I'll differ with Chi and Cynthia in saying that I think ECOWAS is late to the party, right? I mean, take the case of Guinea, for example. Konde perpetuated himself in power for over 2 decades. Yes, there were periodic elections. Yes, he won. But you cannot keep winning elections for 2 decades. Are you the only one in the country? Do you understand? And then you see the support from ECOWAS to such a leader. I mean, he comes for meetings, is regarded as one of them. They are jovial with him. They are friendly with him. There's no statement from ECOWAS as a regional bloc to say, you know what, we understand that Guinea is a sovereign nation. We understand that periodic elections have been conducted, but not a man cannot have all the answers to solving a nation's problems, right? Condé cannot continue to be the president over and over again. But you also look at the case of Senegal recently, and that's not even perpetuating himself in power, Macky Sall, but the fact that he's not giving room for opposition politics in the country is another major concern. If a coup happens in Senegal tomorrow, ECOWAS will come and say, oh, we're against the unconstitutional change of government. But there are, in international relations, it's called remote causes before it gets to that point. That's one of the remote causes. If a coup should happen in Senegal, there's no freedom for opposition politics. And that's not a feature of democracy. Yeah. You should allow, there should be tolerance. Exactly, there should be tolerance for opposition politics. Then you look at Togo, Eyadema, who became president after his father. I mean, it's not a monarchical system of government. Why is it just your own family? After Olympio, then your father, and then you, and you're still in power. Yes, there are periodic elections, but periodic elections are not only the features of a functioning democracy. There should be change of power. There should be room for ideas from a large section of people, not just one person or one particular family becoming president. So I would say ECOWAS is late to the party. I don't think West African citizens regard ECOWAS as a strong regional bloc who are going to consider ECOWAS's stance or say on matters, especially when there are verifiable cases where ECOWAS could or should have done better and then they've fallen short. Right, but we cannot afford for West Africa to slide back into the era of military coup.
Thank you, and I love that point. We cannot afford for West Africa to slide back into the era of military coup. But there's that responsibility on our regional bodies, and both the African Union and ECOWAS. We have beautiful, well-expressive charters and instruments guiding us in our relations, and a lot of them upholding the principles of democracy. But there's also that responsibility on the part of our leaders. Like when we talked about ECOWAS, I do believe that when I say, are they coming late? I actually do believe that in one aspect they are coming late because before this happened, they are, like when we talked about remote causes, there are things leaders should see and call their fellows to order. Number one, why should a country have a leader stay in office 10 years plus? Some constitutions, yes, it's 5-year single term and it can serve 2 terms. We get that. But I don't think anyone should be in office, because if someone is in office 11, 12, 20, 25 years, it's almost like giving the young people no other alternative. And that is what happens. The military see this vulnerability and they look at this as an excuse and they take advantage of it, which is why, unfortunately, what is happening in Niger, you expect, a lot of people are saying, oh, young Nigerians are ignorant. I don't think they're ignorant. I just think they're really frustrated. And they want to be heard. They want things to work for them. And it's for our leaders to start making things to work for us in Africa. Because if leaders keep failing, then this continent that is so rich and so beautiful will not progress. And if our leaders cannot negotiate better with the Western powers, if our leaders cannot have conversations with all the international partners that want to invest or harness our resources, if they cannot put the interest of their citizens first, then it means they are failing us. And a lot of us, the agitation is with young people against all these people coming to do businesses in the country. It's not because they don't want investment or international relations. It's because a lot of times they feel that they are being shortchanged. So if, for instance, China is building a rail and then it's bringing manpower from China, so how does that benefit the average citizen, right? So I'm just using that as a simple example. But even as a people, we need to start asking ourselves these conversations that happen, be it relationships with the US or with the UK or with Europe, or relationships with China or Russia. Let's see the contract. What are the terms? So that we are not in a situation where you have engagements, but the people are not seeing the dividends of this supposed investment, or we know we are rich with resources, but we are poor. Nigeria is blessed with so many natural resources,
even the Niger,
but the level of poverty is high. Niger is blessed with its own natural resources, I mean, 25 million is not such, I mean, it's not up to Nigeria. So for me, 25 million, if leaders manage resources in Niger, I don't think the level of poverty will be this high.
Yes.
So a lot of countries in West Africa, that is also the question. I think before people blame young people, you need to understand where they are coming from and then make decisions that would impact on the lives of the people across our countries. And just in rounding up the conversation, I want you to hear your last thoughts. What would be your advice to you could give it to anyone, the advice to AU or ECOWAS or respective countries or citizens? What would be your advice?
My advice to my fellow young people who seem to be romanticizing military takeovers.
Yes.
I didn't experience military takeover at all, but I heard stories, and my mom would tell me how it was pre-1999 with soldiers walking the roads with guns and all that. So I think the romance or whatever fantasy we have about the military government can never be better than what we have currently. I think that the military are still as bad as the democratically elected leaders we have. Their difference is just that they now have guns, which is worse. So as young people, as Nigerians, we should, and as Africans, we should always advocate for more diplomacy and do away with violence completely. Dictatorship can never be the answer.
Thank you. It can never be the answer.
Yeah. For me, I think my advice is to ECOWAS, and I think it's to keep insisting on dialogue. It seems like the junta is not ready to dialogue with ECOWAS as a regional bloc. I think this is where we need to explore other forms of diplomacy. I mean, there's cultural diplomacy which can be explored. We saw the visit of the former emir of Kano and how it was received by the leadership of the junta. That's one area that ECOWAS should focus on. Explore cultural diplomacy, explore the religious relationship between both countries to be able to come to a conclusion that would not result into loss of lives or into full-blown war with Niger. I think that's just my advice to
ECOWAS.
ECOWAS.
Even when you talked about that, I remember I was discussing with someone, said even the military, because we had the joint task force. Some of our personnel in our military has friends or they know each other.
Yes.
Are they structures internally within the military system, both in Nigeria and Niger that can be explored? Some of them may have been taught by the same teachers.
Yeah, my advice is first the ECOWAS is to explore other means and look at their formation. Is it possible for them to also explore maybe instructors? Because most of these military officers were trained in Jaji here in Kaduna State. Some of them were trained in some of our military institutions. Majority of them were trained in Nigeria. Can they also explore having their instructors as part of the team to move for negotiation? I think the negotiating team, I'm not sure if they gave so much thought to the composition, the people that made up the negotiation team. I don't have the list, I can't speak for that. But coming back to countries like Nigeria and to also prevent the military coup, can we also look at our security formation? We know that most of these West African countries, most of these African countries had experiences of military regimes and security apparatus like in Nigeria, for instance, the police and the DSS, most especially the police, are weakened by the military.
True.
Can we also look at our security formation? In Niger, it was the presidential guard that overtook him.
True.
So can you also look at and have military step back in terms of leading in some of these internal security systems?
True.
Having in Nigeria, for instance, the DSS, the police take over, police built, grounded and trained. I learned that if you go to some of our police institutions and some of where their machineries are, they have some of these things where they cannot use because the military during the military regime made them disempower them. Can we empower them? Can we review our security formation? Unless that is done, they will not have access to. If you review the security formation, it can also form like a repellent to some of this military coup we've been seeing in the last few years.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because our security architecture is something we need to look at, because we also need to start looking inwardly as a nation. How do we ensure we prevent this any likelihood of it happening? The truth is we had a history of military dictatorship, and in fact their presence is still. So if you think about the insecurity in the country, the military is almost in almost every geopolitical
the military
zone.
is stretched.
Is stretched. They are in northwest, northeast, even my southeast, because
Every
with
state,
the issue happening south. So if you think about how the military is now involved in internal security, it also raises a major issue. And the question is, are we funding our police sufficiently to provide security? If you look at the analysis, it shows that currently the Nigerian police is understaffed because we don't have enough personnel. The budget is low. You meet some of the officers, you even feel for them. So as a country, we also need to go back to our security architecture. We need to review our internal security structure. How do we empower the Nigerian police with personnel, with the capacity and with the efficient resources to take care of internal security, and then limit the inroad or the influence of the Nigerian military? I was having a gist with someone. So when someone stop you on the road, when military stop you and police stop, who will you answer first? It says it's that soldier, because soldier know they dialogue with you. At least police, you can say, why you just stop me? What's wrong with you? But when soldiers stop you, stop. And so it just shows that because they are trained for combat, they are trained for battle, they are trained for war.
By the time they block you on express, ask them questions.
Ask questions.
Ask questions. If they say jump, for later, officer, what do you tell me to jump?
Before
no, you won't even ask.
Yes, you won't even ask.
You thank him after discharging you.
Thank you for allowing me to jump, and then you leave. And we don't need that. And I think from everyone, one of the things we've said basically is review our security architecture internally, but also explore means of that, the diplomacy dialogue with even Niger. But as the people, citizens, we need to also get awake. We need to become active to our rights. You said that a very important thing, Chi. Young people in Nigeria didn't experience me. When I see someone then talking about it on Twitter, I want to slap them, because you don't even know that tweet you're tweeting, when there's you cannot tweet that tweet.
I feel like Twitter will be the first platform.
It will be the first platform.
When there was
the most affected people, because at least the older generation have seen military regime. They know how to control them.
Yes, they will be the most affected. And when Abacha died, I was saying when I was a kid, when Abacha died, people couldn't even talk about it until they were certain, because you don't want to end up that I spoke about his death. It now be saying a rumor. And you will carry this rumor. You're gone. So I think we need to understand that democracy is still what we want, is what we deserve, is what we demand as a people, but democracy needs to deliver to its citizens. And lastly, to our leaders, everything is at your table, because at the end, if leaders keep failing, you don't give young people an alternative. And if our leaders get it right, our continent would progress and would prosper. So basically, at the end of it all, it's back to the leaders. Those at the ECOWAS, at African Union. We really need leaders that are committed to democracy in their actions, in what they do, and in their body language. And so it's not just talking and say, I support democracy. Your body language should also be supporting democracy and upholding the policies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an interesting conversation. I wasn't sure if conversation around coup would be an interesting conversation, because it's a bit sad to talk about it, but I think it's good we have this kind of conversation. But we're going to do a shout out to our crew behind the scene. Chi, I'll leave that to you.
There seems to be a mood change right now, because we're just so sober from the crew talk, and now we have to hail our crew members.
We have to still hail them. Life goes on. We say now, we move.
We move. Our crew members, thank you so much for always working behind the scenes. Coca.
Yes, so
our great cinematographer.
Yeah.
Well done, Coca. David, cinematographer too. Hamilton Odems, our director, social media strategist. There's also Ayo.
Yes, Ayo. We have Queen CY, who is one of our co-hosts, but she's supporting us from behind the scene. We have
with her vibes.
Yeah, we have vibes. We have Austin, and we have Steven and Samuel Folorusho. But our producer, let's not forget the one and only DJ Drexx. Shout out to you. But to our amazing audience and listeners, thank you always for keeping a date with us. You know what to do.
Always like our posts, subscribe if you haven't, share, comment. We value your feedback. Follow us on all our social media at UnAmplified Podcast.
Yes, and to our amazing guest, Cynthia, thank you so much for it. I know it was not easy.
I learned so much from Cynthia and Sanusi.
Yes. So it was not easy to pull both of you.
I learned more from you guys.
Please, now we're trading compliments at each other. But thank you for being part of the conversation today. Thank you so much, Sanusi. It's good to have you here. Hopefully, the next time we have a conversation, it will be that no more coups, democracy is doing better, and young
not
people
football.
Not football, but most importantly, that young people can start having hope again in our democracy. We really believe that democracy works better for the people, and we hope that we will all work together to hold our leaders to account and demand that democracy works. Like we always say, when you're on,
you're amplified.
And cheers to Africa.
Cheers.